Well, hi, everyone. Sorry for the late start today. My printer jammed, of course, right as I was walking out the door. The doom of the procrastinator. It's a lot of people here today. It's great. Well, you probably already know this, but this class is part of a monthly series in which we discuss how to apply fundamental Buddhist principles to our daily life. I do see some new faces here. In case you don't know, this room is open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and you're always welcome to come here. So if you want to spend any time in the room after the class or any time at all, everyone is always welcome here. So before we begin, let's take a moment to generate compassion and set our intention. It's our motivation that directs our actions, so it's always important to take time to clarify our motivation and make sure that we are directing our actions in the direction that we want to go. So today we are here studying the Dharma so that we can learn how to be of benefit to ourselves and others and to bring an end to suffering in all forms. So today we're going to be talking about the 4 thoughts that turn the mind to Dharma. And I actually have a handout, if I could have a volunteer. Thank you. So the 4 thoughts that turn the mind to Dharma are called the common foundation because they're common to all of the Buddhist traditions. And contemplating them is a classic method for preparing oneself to practice Dharma. Contemplation of the 4 thoughts upholds our spiritual practice, the same way that a foundation upholds a building. So if you were to build a home, you would first want to build a very strong and stable foundation, right? You wouldn't want to build your house on the side of a crumbling cliff or on the surface of a frozen lake. If you didn't have that strong foundation, your house could come crashing down at any time. So we really want to make sure to have a strong, solid foundation for anything we build. If we don't build a solid spiritual foundation, and only listen to the teaching superficially, then we'll never really change. We'll continue to suffer from the same hatred, greed, and ignorance that we always have, and our ability to benefit others will remain limited. And if we don't build a solid foundation and develop a very strong motivation for practice, then we'll come up with all kinds of excuses to avoid practicing, right? Everything inside and outside of us will seem to stand in our way. It's too hot, it's too cold, I'm hungry, I just ate, and now I feel kind of bloated, so I don't really want to sit on my meditation cushion, or I have to go to work, I have to relax, everything. It's a weekday, it's a weekend, it's night, it's morning. Anything can be an excuse. So we have to have that solid foundation. If we have that solid foundation for our spiritual practice, then that doesn't happen. And in order to build that solid foundation, we contemplate the 4 thoughts. The 4 thoughts that turn the mind are the freedom and opportunity of our precious human existence and the difficulty of obtaining it. The second thought is on death and impermanence. The third is the law of karma, or cause and effect, action and result. And the 4th is the suffering that pervades cyclic existence. By meditating on the first thought, our precious human rebirth, and the second thought of impermanence, we come to realize that this life that we have is an incredibly rare and precious opportunity, and that our time here is awfully short. So contemplating these 2 thoughts helps to reduce our mind's poisons and steer us toward liberation. And when we carry these thoughts with us throughout our daily lives, not just in our formal meditation practice, but when we go to work and at home with our families, then we develop more equanimity and ease in dealing with our life's changes. Keeping these thoughts in mind and contemplating them on a regular basis will naturally reorder our priorities, which helps us develop contentment as well. So by contemplating these, we come to understand that enough is enough, and that if we keep trying to satiate our ever-multiplying desires, we'll never be fulfilled. There's never an end to our desires, and so if we just keep trying to satiate them, we'll remain discontented. Still, we may find ourselves seeking relative worldly happiness instead of ultimate happiness, because that's our habit. It's our habit to think only of ourselves and to think only of how to make this temporary worldly circumstance as, the best and most comfortable and stylish as it can be. We want to make everything about our temporary worldly circumstances fulfill our desires. But this short-sightedness creates obstacles to liberation too. And so, to work with the short-sightedness, we meditate on the second two of the four thoughts. We meditate on the karmic process of cause and effect, really understanding how that law works, and then the suffering that pervades cyclic existence. Chagdud Tulku says, through these two contemplations, we reduce our attachment to conventional happiness and experience a gradual loosening of ever more subtle ties to samsara. With less attachment to our worldly experience, we turn toward the path to enlightenment, removing everything counterproductive and bringing together everything supportive to our goal. So let's read through the four thoughts together. And can I get a copy of one of those? Thank you. So let's read through this in English. I prostrate to the glorious Khyentse Zangpo. The leisures and endowments are extremely difficult to obtain, no matter what my birth, impermanence, and death await. Perseverance in the practice of virtuous Dharma is the cause for becoming a Buddha. Whatever negativity I create, I will wander in the six realms accordingly. Hungry spirits suffer from hunger and thirst, animals from stupidity, hell beings from heat and cold, humans from birth, old age, sickness, and death, demigods from warfare, and even gods have their suffering. So it's best to keep these contemplations in mind at all times. Of course, it's not our habit. So if you can, try to remind yourself of these four thoughts throughout the day. Just start building that muscle of trying to remind yourself to bring these to mind. If nothing else, you can read them at the beginning of your daily practice, or if you don't have a daily spiritual practice yet, you can start with these, with just reading these aloud before you leave the house in the morning. Orient yourself to what is truly precious and a worldview that is actually, really helpful in clarifying what we should do and don't do before we go out in the world and get distracted. You can orient yourself with this. So this is really good to just contemplate on every day. And Chagdud Tulku says, many people believe these teachings are for beginners. They want to hurry onto something profound, beyond what they think of as kindergarten Dharma. But the contemplation of the four thoughts is among the most profound and beneficial practices on the path to enlightenment. For these are the foundational truths that underlie the entire spiritual path. So let's dive into the first thought. The freedom and opportunity of our precious human existence and the difficulty of obtaining it. So imagine that you're very poor, and all of a sudden you find yourself in a land where everything is made of gold and adorned with precious jewels. There are mountains of gold coins and jewels everywhere you look, riches like you've never seen before. And somehow you're able to live there for many years, but eventually you have to return home. And this journey home is extremely dangerous, and you have to cross mountains and oceans, and it's an incredibly perilous journey, and there is no possibility that you will ever be able to return to this land of jewels. Now imagine once you finally arrive back home, that you realize that you didn't think to bring a single thing with you, not a single jewel, not even a speck of gold dust. You're probably taking off your shoes to see if there's any gold dust stuck to the bottom of them, but there isn't. There's nothing. You didn't bring anything with you. Just imagine how much regret you would feel. Chagdud Tulku says, in the same way, we move lifetime after lifetime through the cycles of suffering, lacking the merit, the virtue and positive energy necessary to propel us out of samsara. Then a few rare conditions come together to produce this precious human existence with its immense opportunity. If we die without using it to full advantage, we will have left the human realm empty-handed, having accomplished nothing. You might have wondered at some point in your life, why was I born? What is the purpose of this life that I have, this human life that I have? Some people think their purpose is to be a soccer player or a musician or a novelist, but any games won, any music played, any books one might write, all of these are impermanent. In fact, all of our triumphs and accomplishments of this life are impermanent. But we chase after them anyways. In truth, the experiences of our daily lives are as unreal and as insubstantial as the dreams we have at night. But we don't realize that. We don't realize that we're dreaming. So we take life very seriously, and we get really upset when things don't go the way we want them to. Chagdud Tulku says, waking up, revealing the essence of our existence, is the overriding purpose of our lives. But what is this essence? It can't be our body, since all that is left when our mind leaves the body is a corpse. Nor can it be the speech faculty, since that's simply a function of the body. But it isn't the superficial vacillations of the emotions either, the continuous up and down of hope and fear, liking and disliking, or the activity of mind that, like a jumping flea or popping corn, is always moving and changing. To find the essence, we have to realize the true nature of our body, speech, and mind, beyond our dreamlike experience of reality, and the capacity to do so can be found only in the precious human birth. So we contemplate the preciousness of our human birth to develop an appreciation for having both the ability and the opportunity to practice the Dharma. To have a human body is extremely important for Dharma practice. Unlike animals that are always being hunted, or people living in countries that are torn apart by civil war or gang violence, we enjoy a pretty fundamental sense of personal security, right? I mean, yes, we have a problem with gun violence in this country, but our lives are not usually at risk. We're not expecting to be blown up by a bomb while we're waiting for the bus. We're not spending every waking hour desperately searching for food or a safe place to sleep. We're generally pretty comfortable. And most of us are able to appreciate the compassionate acts of others, and are even able to be inspired by remarkable beings like the Buddha or Jesus, beings that, these beings that inspire us. We don't even think to be grateful for the fact that we can be inspired. We have the ability to be inspired. Most importantly, we are able to make the wish for all beings to be free of suffering and for all beings to be happy, and without thinking of that as a waste of time. And therefore, in some ways, we do have the qualities that qualify us as having a precious human birth. The trouble is that we don't often take advantage of our good fortune. We take it for granted instead. For example, there's nothing to stop any of us from spending an hour at a coffee shop with our friends hanging out, or spending an evening binge watching some show on Netflix, right? There's nothing to stop us from wasting time in these ways. But very few beings in the other realms have the luxury of wasting time like that. Imagine what it must have been like to be born in Jerusalem or the Gaza Strip, perpetually under the threat of being shot or blown to pieces. Or to be a child in Yemen right now, so malnourished, their thighs are no thicker than your wrists, and so hungry, just searching constantly for any crumb of food. Our lives are not like that. we are generally pretty comfortable. We have a lot of luxury in our life. So we must really try to appreciate the luxuries that we have of leisure time and personal security and make sure that we use them well. To be born a human being is an extremely precious opportunity because, to some degree, humans have the intellectual capacity to understand the nature of suffering and its causes. On the other hand, beings in the hell realms know only pain. Their whole experience is just unrelenting pain, and they don't know anything else. Or on the other hand, there are the beings in the God realms who have everything they could possibly want, and the only thing they know is uninterrupted happiness. And that sounds lovely, but they actually, because they lack the experience of sadness, the gods don't have the curiosity to investigate their own minds, and so they're not able to engage in spiritual practice. So of the 6 realms of samsara, human beings have the greatest capacity for understanding suffering. We're neither too happy nor too overwhelmed by suffering and pain. We're in like a kind of Goldilocks zone where we have just the right amount of suffering to inspire us towards spiritual practice, but not so much suffering that we can't think of anything else. Chagdud Tulku says, "We cannot assume that having been human once will be guaranteed a human existence again and again. A human body is very difficult to obtain. It requires the accumulation of a vast amount of merit through scrupulously pure discipline in past lifetimes. Discipline of this kind involves 3 things: not performing negative acts or harmful behavior, cultivating virtuous thoughts and actions, and having as one's motivation for observing the first 2 disciplines an altruistic desire to benefit others. It is only because we have amassed this amount of merit, coupled with the aspiration to be reborn as a human being, that we are here now in the human realm." So this is why, when we read this, we say, the leisures and endowments are extremely difficult to obtain. So remember that we're not here by chance or luck, but because we have actually done quite a lot of work to get here into this human body. This precious human birth provides a freedom and leisure to practice that cannot be found in the other realms of experience. When we say precious human birth, we're not referring to any old human existence. Not every human existence is precious by this definition. An existence in which one is born and lives and dies and then just goes on, your consciousness goes on to some other experience, that's not necessarily precious. A precious human birth is, a human rebirth is only precious when it's endowed with 8 types of leisure or freedom and 10 qualities and conditions known as the 10 advantages. So what do we mean by freedom? Freedom means to have the opportunity to practice the Dharma and not to be born in one of the 8 states without that opportunity. So we'll go through each of these 8 states and the 10 advantages. The 8 states without freedom are being born in the hells, being born in the Preta realm, being born as an animal, being born as a long-lived god, being born as a barbarian, having wrong views, being born when there is no Buddha, and being born deaf and mute. The first state without freedom is to be born in the hells. So, as I already said, the beings in the hells don't have the opportunity to practice the Dharma because they are suffering constantly, constantly suffering. They were born in the hells due to committing any one of the 10 negative actions with a motivation of hatred. The 10 negative actions are actions such as killing, lying, stealing, sexual misconduct, etc. Committing any one of them with a motivation of hatred causes rebirth in the hells. And as a result of those past negative actions, The beings in hell are tormented by intense heat or cold, and they suffer from tremendous pain. And this suffering is all-consuming, so they have no opportunity to practice the Dharma. There isn't even a little bit of space in their mind to contemplate something other than the suffering that they are experiencing. The second state without freedom is to be born in the realm of pretas, or hungry ghosts. The cause of being born in this realm is committing one of any of those 10 negative actions with a motivation of desire. So the hungry ghosts are beings that are constantly tormented by hunger and thirst. They can go centuries without even hearing the mention of water. All they can think about is their immense hunger and thirst. And they search endlessly for something to eat or drink. Sometimes they see in the distance the sight of a stream where they might be able to find some water, or an orchard where they could find some fruit to eat. And it causes them, it's so difficult and painful for them to move, but still they try to reach that stream or reach that orchard to find some water or some food. But when they arrive, the river is dried up and the orchard is barren and withered. So no matter how much they exhaust themselves, no matter how much pain they put themselves through trying to get to some morsel of food or some drop of water, they never get it. They never are able to satiate their desire. And some hungry ghosts have mouths no bigger than the eye of a needle, and their throats are no thicker than a single horsehair, and yet their stomachs are huge. They're the size of an entire country. So even if they could get a drop of water or a small little crumb through their mouths and down their throats, they would never be able to fill up their stomachs because their desire is so insatiable. So the hungry ghosts have no opportunity to practice the Dharma because they are constantly suffering from their hunger and thirst. They can't think of anything else. The third state without freedom is to be born as an animal. The cause of being born as an animal is committing one of the 10 negative actions with a motivation of ignorance. So just imagine being born as an animal. If you're an animal in the wild, every waking thought is just about your survival, just about the daily tasks of surviving. You're either hunting another animal or you're being hunted by another animal or a human. Animals suffer from slavery as pack mules and dairy cows and all sorts of other work that we make them do. And some animals have amazingly keen senses, almost like superpowers, like the canine dogs that can sniff out drugs or bombs or even cancer, some of them. And then some animals are really smart, like elephants or parrots. So we might think they have some cool experience having these extremely strong senses, but they're not capable of higher thought like humans are. And they don't have the wisdom to be able to discern between what's good and what's bad. They're consumed by the daily task of simply surviving, and so they don't have the opportunity to practice the Dharma. They're always subject to the fear of being hunted or needing to find food or the attacks of other animals, and they're consumed by this survival instinct. The fourth state without freedom is to be born as a long-lived God. So beings are born in this realm as a result of believing that liberation is a state in which all mental activities, good and bad, are absent, and of meditating upon that state. In one of the God realms, there is no perception, no sense of perception at all. The beings in this realm spend their time in a state of mental blankness. It's like a type of meditative absorption where one's perception is so numbed to the point of being completely closed off to the outside world. So in that state, beings lack the ability to discern what's right from what is wrong, and they lack the ability to hear the Dharma. They're completely closed off. Another God realm is characterized by immense pleasure and power, and it's intoxicating. Like imagine if you were to get everything that you ever wanted, right in this moment, all of your wishes were to be fulfilled. everything you could ever wish for, what would you need to pray for? What would you need spiritual practice for? Right? You'd be set. You wouldn't think of anything else. And you can see this even within our own human experience. You can see this with people that have so much wealth. They've amassed so much wealth. They don't have to think of others. They don't have to think of spiritual practice. They don't have to think of anything. They can simply spend their time managing their wealth and enjoying their luxuries. But because of impermanence, that does come to an end. And for the gods, even though their lives are very, very long, when their life does come to an end, once the karma that brought themselves to the god realm has exhausted itself, they are reborn in the lower realms because of their wrong views. So the long-lived gods lack any opportunity to practice the Dharma because they spend their time in that state of mental blankness, closed off from everything else. The fifth state without freedom is to be born as a barbarian. And being born as a barbarian means to be born in a place where the doctrine of the Buddha is unknown. So, not so long ago, America was considered a barbarian land. It still is a bit. So, being a barbarian also refers to those beings who consider harming others an act of faith, or those who believe that taking life is good. So these beings live in a way that is the very opposite of Dharma practice. Everything they do is evil, and they excel at activities such as hunting and killing insects and harming others. Many of these beings fall into the lower realms as soon as they die because they've spent their life engaging in negative actions and harming others. So if you're born as a human being in a barbarous place where there is no Dharma, no seekers of the spiritual path, and no one is there to teach you about developing loving kindness or wisdom, then even as a human being, you would not have the freedom to practice the Dharma. The sixth state without freedom is having wrong views. And this refers to beings with views or beliefs that are contrary to the teachings of the Buddha, including the belief that actions cause no karmic effect, or the beliefs of eternalism and nihilism. These kinds of beliefs spoil our minds, and they prevent us from aspiring to the authentic Dharma, to the extent that we no longer have the opportunity to practice it. Khenpo Norgay says, even if you are born in the human realm, in a place where the Dharma exists, and you can choose all these religious practices to develop the inner qualities of loving kindness and compassion, you might still have the wrong view that no life exists after death. You might mistakenly believe only in what you can hear and see, and so would not have the impetus to seek liberation from cyclic existence. As such, your wrong view would deny you the freedom to practice the Dharma. So an example of this is the story of the monk Sunaksatra. And I'm probably butchering that name. Sunaksatra spent 25 years as the Lord Buddha's attendant, and he knew all of the teachings by heart, but he saw everything the Buddha did as deceitful. So eventually he came to the erroneous conclusion that apart from having an aura 6 feet wide, there was no difference between the Buddha and himself. So one day he told the Buddha, apart from the light around your body 6 feet wide, in 25 years as your attendant, I have never seen even a sesame seed's worth of special qualities in you. And as for the Dharma, I know as much as you do. So, see ya. I'm not going to serve you anymore. So saying this, he left, and Ananda became the Buddha's attendant. And Ananda was concerned by this, and he asked the Buddha, what will happen to Sunaksatra? And the Buddha said that in 1 week's time, Sunaksatra's life would come to an end. He predicted that he would get thirsty and die from drinking some water, and would be reborn as a hungry ghost in a flower garden. Ananda believed what the Buddha said, and he went to Sunaksatra to tell him. He warned him that the Buddha had said this, and he begged him to confess his wrong views. But Sunaksatra thought to himself, you know, sometimes these lies of the Buddha come true, so I should probably lay low for 7 days. I'll be really careful. And at the end of the week, I'll make him eat his words. So he spent the week fasting. But on the morning of the 7th day, his throat felt really dry. So he drank some water, which made him sick, and he died. And when Ananda heard the news, he asked the Buddha where Sunaksatra had been reborn. And the Buddha said that he had been reborn as a hungry ghost in a flower garden. And that after that, he would be born again in the lower realms. So hearing this, Ananda pleaded for the Buddha to liberate Sunaksatra. And the Buddha went to where Sunaksatra was born, and he gave him teachings. He really tried to help him. He tried to give him refuge. He tried to teach him about cause and effect. But Sunaksatra didn't listen. He said, "During my time in the human realm, you kept deceiving me. And even now that I'm dead, you appear here to deceive me." So he wouldn't listen, and just as the Buddha predicted, he was reborn in the lower realms. So that's an example of how, even with the best of opportunities, if we harbor wrong views, we lack the freedom to practice the Dharma. The 7th state without freedom is to be born when there is no Buddha. This is called the age of darkness between two Buddhas, and it's when the teachings of one Buddha have already disappeared from the world, and the next Buddha has not yet appeared. In this aeon of darkness, no one has even heard of the Buddha or the Dharma or the Sangha, and they have no way to learn how to distinguish good from bad. Because there are no teachings of the Dharma, there's no opportunity to practice it. The 8th state without freedom is to be born deaf and mute. So those born mute or mentally deficient have no opportunity to practice the Dharma because their faculties are incomplete. If one is born with a mind that does not function properly, then the process of listening to the teachings, expounding them, reflecting on them, and putting them into practice will be impeded. The term deaf-mute usually refers to a speech dysfunction. So it becomes a condition without the opportunity for Dharma, when the usual human ability to use and understand language is absent. So this category also includes those whose mental disability makes them unable to comprehend the teachings. If one can't comprehend the teachings, one can't put them into practice. So therefore, you would not have the freedom to practice the Dharma. So those are the 8 states without freedom. And again, a human rebirth is only precious when it's endowed with the 8 types of freedoms and the 10 advantages. So those are the 8 types of freedom, and then the 10 advantages are actually 2 lists of 5. There's so many lists. So in talking about the 10 advantages, 5 come from external circumstances, and 5 come from one's own individual nature. The 5 circumstantial advantages are: the Buddha has come to this world. He has given the teachings. The teachings still survive. You have taken up the Dharma, and through someone's compassion, you are receiving the teachings. The 5 individual advantages are being born as a human being in a place where the Dharma exists, with all of your faculties intact, without a conflicting lifestyle or wrong views, and with faith in the Dharma. So the first circumstantial advantage is that the Buddha has come to this world. So we can check the box there. We have that one. The Buddha has come to this world. Those born in a dark aeon, in which a Buddha has not yet appeared, have never even heard of the Dharma. But we're in an age where the Buddha has come, and so we possess the advantage of the presence of the teacher. The second circumstantial advantage is that the Buddha has taught. So if the Buddha had come, but he had not taught, then no one would benefit. But since the Buddha did give teachings, we can benefit from them, and we have the advantage of the teaching of the Dharma. The third circumstantial advantage is that the teaching still survives. So if the Buddha had taught, but his doctrine had died out before we were born, then it would no longer be there to help us. But we are in a period where the Buddhist teachings still exist, and so we have the advantage of the time. The fourth circumstantial advantage is that you have taken up the Dharma. Although the teachings still exist, until we follow them, they can't be of any benefit to us. We have to actually engage with them. But since we have taken up the Dharma, we have the advantage of our own good fortune. The fifth circumstantial advantage is that there are those who are kind-hearted toward others. And this specifically refers to teachers, that you are receiving, that through someone's compassion, you are able to receive the teachings. So although we have taken up the Dharma, if we did not have this favorable circumstance of having a spiritual friend or lama, then we would never come to know what the Dharma is really about. We could really delude ourselves just reading books without the actual guidance of a spiritual friend. But since a spiritual friend has accepted us, we possess the advantage of his or her extraordinary compassion. So those are the 5 circumstantial advantages. And then there are the 5 individual advantages. So the first of these is being born a human. Without a human life, it wouldn't even be possible to encounter the Dharma. So this human body is the advantage of support. The second individual advantage is to be born in a place where the Dharma exists. So if you had been born in a remote place where the Dharma was not heard of, then you would never have come across it. But you were born in a country where Dharma exists, and so you have the advantage of place. The third of the individual advantages is to have all of your faculties intact. If you didn't have all of your sense faculties intact, that would be a great hindrance on the path. If you were unable to see the representations of the Buddha to inspire devotion, or if you were unable to read and hear the teachings so you could study and reflect on them, it would be really difficult for you to receive the Dharma then. But if you are free of those difficulties, you have the advantage of possessing the sense faculties. The fourth of the individual advantages is not having a conflicting lifestyle. And here, strictly speaking, the term conflicting lifestyle refers to the lifestyles of people born in communities of hunters and prostitutes and so forth, who from the earliest age are engaging in actions that are contrary to the Dharma. But it also includes anyone whose every thought, word, and deed is contrary to the Dharma. Because even those who haven't been born into such lifestyles can easily slip into them at any point in their life. So it's essential to avoid doing anything which conflicts with the Dharma. If you had a conflicting lifestyle, you would always be immersed in negative actions and at variance with the Dharma. So it's a little bit of that, take one step forward, take 2 steps back. You could be studying the Dharma, but everything you do is going in the opposite direction. So that won't work out. But since you have the wish to do positive actions, then that is the advantage of intention. The fifth of the individual advantages is having faith in the Dharma. If you don't have faith in the Buddhist teachings and you place your faith in powerful gods or in the doctrines of eternalism or nihilism, then no matter how much faith you might place in those doctrines or in those gods, they can't save you from samsara. None of them can protect you from the sufferings of samsara or from rebirth in the lower realms. But if you've developed a properly reasoned faith in the Buddha's doctrine, then you, without doubt, are a good vessel for the Dharma. This is the greatest of the 5 individual advantages, is the advantage of faith. It's the most important advantage to have. If you had no faith in the Buddhist teachings, you wouldn't feel any inclination for the Dharma. But having the ability to turn your mind to the Dharma, as you are doing now, that is the advantage of faith. So those are the 5 individual advantages. So your homework for this class is, is to check your own life and circumstances against these. Look and see if you have the 8 freedoms and the 10 advantages. If you find that all of these favorable conditions are present, then you have what is known as human life endowed with 18 freedoms and advantages. Congratulations. But wait, there's more. There's actually more. So Longchenpa in the wish-granting treasury specifies 16 additional conditions which preclude any opportunity to practice the Dharma. So before those 16 factors have been ruled out, it might appear as if someone has all of the freedoms and advantages. And they might appear as if they are true practitioners of the Dharma. But as long as you are under the sway of these 16 additional limiting conditions, you are not on the true path. So to find out about those, you'll have to come back next time. And then you can find out how to be on the true path. So this class is on the second Sunday of every month at 5 p.m. So our next class is on December 9th. And we will continue talking about the precious human rebirth and the qualities that qualify a human birth as precious. And we will talk about these 16 additional limiting conditions. So, does anyone have any questions before we end our class with a meditation? Great. Awesome. Okay, well, so we will end this class with a brief meditation. So this is a technique to stabilize our minds called shamatha meditation. And this is a simple meditation. You can try this anytime. We're just going to watch our breath. And this meditation helps to calm reactivity in the mind. And by calming reactivity, we are able to create space in the mind. And this allows us to fully absorb the teachings, and it allows us to make better decisions, to have a split second of space before we do something terrible. So shamatha meditation is very helpful for just stabilizing the roller coaster of hope and fear and liking and disliking and reaction that we are always subject to. Of course, we have our habit of liking and disliking and hope and fear. So your ego is going to do everything it can to distract you during meditation, but just don't engage with it. If you find yourself following a thought, just drop it and just return to your breath. Our meditation is not lost by having thoughts, but by following them. So we can just sit comfortably with our backs straight. I'm going to set a little timer for 5 minutes. So in our tradition, we meditate with our eyes slightly open. So you can just sit up straight and place your hands in your lap in a way that's comfortable to you. And have your eyes slightly open and pointed downward. And we'll just meditate for 5 minutes, keeping the focus on the breath very lightly. Just putting the most gossamer thin attention on your breath, like a feather is riding on your breath. We'll go for 5 minutes. Then we'll close with a short dedication.
Just my dedication. By this effort, may all sentient beings be free of suffering. May their minds be filled with the nectar of virtue. In this way, may all causes resulting in suffering be extinguished, and only the light of compassion shine throughout all realms.
Thank you, Atira.
All right, thank you.